Hello, BookTube. I needed a little relief first thing this morning from flying brick dust and flaking fibrous asbestos and exposed brickwork and naked uncapped plumbing and all the other joys that go along with having plastic translucent tarps taped over every doorway. So I betook me to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, which is a great used bookstore down in downtown Boston that I love. I've been going there forever, and I almost never walk away empty-handed. The stock is double stacked on almost every shelf inside. The prices are all really reasonable. There's a huge amount of turnover in what they buy. And in addition to all that, there's a sale lot next door that's enormous. It's thousands more books for $1, $3, or $5. So if you went to the Brattle Bookshop and you thought, well, I don't have anything specific in mind, I don't have a list. Now, if you do keep a mental list, as so many people do and use book shopping, chances are you're going to be able to find everything on that list inside the shop. But if you go without a list, if you say, I've got an hour to browse these carts, and I've got $20. There you go. You will never have a better hour in the city of Boston than that hour if you're a bookish person. Because you could, if you wanted, restrict yourself to the $1 carts and get 20 books. Either way, you're going to get a lot for your money. And if you want to bump that up to $30 or $40, you will get as many books as you can carry. Forever and ever, when I go to the Brattle, the sign of stopping for me was not money. It was how much am I carrying? Is my bag full of books? Because I don't want to carry any more than that. Especially if I've got other errands to do, I try to get in a few errands before the drill bits started here, because I won't be able to do that once there's active fly-in construction here. I'm certainly not going to leave the bean in a circumstance like that. So I went to the Brattle and I had a blast, talked with the staff, and had a great time. And I found a stack of books. Despite the fact that I do a huge amount of reading on my e-reader, on my Kindle Oasis, for instance. I do a huge amount of reading on the e-reader, but there's a joy to shopping at the Brattle. It's a calming, sanitizing thing. And, as I always say, it's like a wave cresting on the shore. When it pulls away, it leaves a little bit behind. A tiny bit here, a tiny bit there. That's what shopping at the Brattle is like for me. I'm not saying that all of the books that I got today are keepers. I know for a fact that quite a few of them are not. But there'll be an enormous amount of joy to read or reread. And who knows how many of them I will keep. It'll be interesting to see. So let's look at this pile, and we'll start with, what do we want to start with? Let's start with the mass market paperback. And the mass market paperback I got is one of these old pocketbook editions from during the war, from during World War II. This one actually says, what does it say here when it starts off? Our boys need and deserve books. The Victory Book Campaign asks for your cooperation. Soldiers at sea, soldiers in the Solomons, Marines in Africa, commandos on the alert in some unrevealed jumping off place, they all need books to read. To read for pleasure, for information, and for just plain relaxation. To take their minds off sounds and sights they're trying to stop forever. Give them books. Give them this book when you are through with it. Take it to the nearest public library or send it to the address below. Help win the war. Don't waste anything. You can help by saving useful waste and scrap. Save all old paper, rubber, metal, and rags. Give it to a charitable organization such as the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Salvation Army, or the police departments in some cities, or sell it to a junk dealer. And the thing I like about these old pocket mass market paperbacks is that they're incredibly well made. This is Fast Company by Marco Page, which you will be shocked to learn is a pseudonym. And this is really well made. I mean, this is not going to fall apart when I read it, despite the fact that it's 80 years old. It has the red text block there, but the make of it is incredibly solid. And I didn't know anything about this, but I had to grab it. Not only because the description up at the top there says rare books and raw murder mix. which automatically made me think of all the antiquarian book dealers that I know, both at the Brattle and out in the world. Not only that, so that made me think of, like, for instance, Jason Harrigan, who used to be on BookTube, who was a book dealer. That made me think of Jason Harrigan, and then, you can see the detail on the cover that made me think of Tom at Tom L.A. Books. That's Dante, nosing his way into the subject matter. This is about a rare book dealer who gets in trouble. Joel Glass was a book dealer. When the bottom dropped out of the market and the big shots stopped buying rare books, he turned his agile mind to sleuthing on the side. So this is from probably the mid-1940s. It would have to be, right? If it still has, what's the publication date on this? It originally came out in 1938, and this reprint was done in 1943, so right in the middle of the war. Fine by me. I'll clean it up just a little, but I won't. I will count on at least one reading of this without it falling apart. So that's great. Never wrong time for a murder mystery. Then a Roman book. I don't have many of those anymore. I used to have a floor-to-ceiling bookcase crammed with them. I try to use the yardstick with my books, my print paper books, that if I'm not going back to them, they don't stay. No matter how much I went back to them at one point, if I'm not using them now, they don't stay. So that what you might call a Roman collection frittered away over the years, over the decades. And this thing was never part of it. This is by Michael Coffey, and it's called Roman Satire. There is a beware of dog sign. This is in case you are wondering, that the Romans also did that. They would also put up a sign saying beware of dogs when they didn't have a dog. And this is all about the vast amount of ancient Roman literature we have that is satirical. So you've got Juvenal in here, and of course my beloved Horace, and a bunch of other things. It's going to be a joy to read this. I don't know if it'll teach me much that's new. This thing came out in 1976, and it has a cute little bookmark. This was not a gift, but it was cheap enough. It was $1, I think. This will feature a lot of Roman authors that I really like. Most of my favorite Roman authors were satirists, so I grabbed it. Then there's another paperback here. This is a classic example of. Can we do block? There we go. This is a classic example of stubbornness on my part. And maybe FOMO, maybe fear of missing out. Because there are a handful of authors out there that I just don't like. I've read everything they've ever written, sometimes more than once. I've sometimes reviewed some of it, and it just doesn't work on me at all. And that becomes especially galling when their reputation is sung from every rooftop. That makes me think maybe, despite the fact that I am a sexy, omnipotent, omniscient influencer, I might be missing something. I feel that way all the time. Despite how certain my opinions are, I've never understood the value in having an opinion if you don't have it for certain. The key thing is that you're willing to change it if it's wrong, not how strongly you hold it. But I found a trade paperback of a book by this author, and it's no small undertaking. It would take me all night to read. And I've read it, and it didn't do anything for me. I thought it was absolutely inert on the page. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try. This is The Book and the Brotherhood by Iris Murdoch. In a rather nice trade paperback that I don't think I've ever seen. At first I thought it was UK only, but it's got a US price tag on it. I don't think I've ever seen this look this good. So I got it. It's about a bunch of authors. It's about history and the writing of history. It's about a book, one particular text. And I haven't read it since it came out. When did this come out? You Iris Murdoch fans would know. 1987. Late 80s. I haven't read it since then. That's a long time ago. And people love this author. Maybe fewer love this author now than did, back when this book came out. But when this book came out, the common consensus among my critical brethren at the time was that this is one of the major authors working in English at the time. I don't know the extent to which that reputation endures. I really don't know what people make of Iris Murdoch now. But I'm going to give this another try. And I may even resort to the A-bomb, which is to read it slowly. Very slowly. to use my a mechanical pencil as a bookmark to remind myself to annotate and to go slow. I recently did that with Bring Up the Bodies by Hilary Mantel and loved it. I loved the experience. And I have now decided that there will always be a print and paper book that I'm doing that with. It's just most of the time that I've done that, I've picked books that I already read or that I know I like. But this will be the first time where I'm doing it the reverse, where I'm trying to renovate my thoughts about a book. I will give it every opportunity in the world. We shall see. Like I said, I was aided by the fact that these things are dirt cheap. So, I mean, if this had been, $8 in some rip-off secondhand bookstore, I wouldn't have cared what the shape of it was. I wouldn't have paid it. And then this next one is pro forma. It's very, very predictable, and I've had it before. But I have a whole bookcase devoted to books about books, bookish essays, prefaces, collected reviews, that sort of thing. So I grabbed it for that, and I'm sure that it will give me, 45 minutes of enjoyment tonight. This is Where the Book Falls Open. It's a pretty little collection with original paintings of poems and little prose musings on books, on the wonder of reading, the wonder of libraries, the wonder of cozying up alone with a book with no construction is going on, that sort of thing. It's a tiny little thing. I've had it before. I've sold it. I've hand sold it to customers. But as soon as I saw it, I realized that now's the time when I don't have a copy, so I grabbed it. And I'm sure that it will repay the $1 that it cost. Then this next one, this is an author, used to be hugely popular. He's totally forgotten now. No one's ever going to reprint him. No one's ever going to remember him. I love his work, and I want all of it. I want all of his work, but I want them, they're older. He's a century old, and I want his books with dust jackets. It's silly, I know. It doesn't affect the content of the book, but I nevertheless do. The author is Joseph Lincoln, and this is one of his books, A. Hall and Company. And I found it at the Brattle. That isn't damaged. That's a buckboard sign. I found it at the Brattle with a dust jacket that is in relatively good shape. I'll take it, definitely. I have a handful, maybe 3 of this author's books, because I insist on this. And the only reason that I'm able to insist on this is because of the Brattle's turnover. If it were a normal used bookstore or a library sale or something like that, I would just grab them and I wouldn't care. But at the Brattle, I can actually make the totally prima donna decision to wait to get these with dust jackets. Joseph Lincoln was a terrific guy. He was a terrific writer. A. Hall and Company came out in 1938 and was one of dozens of books that this author wrote, almost all of them set on Cape Cod, which, for those of you who aren't up on your American geography, the state of Massachusetts is basically a rectangle with a fish hook extending out into the Atlantic Ocean. And the end of that fish hook is Cape Cod. And it's a wonderful place, a magical place. I know it backwards and forwards. I know every inch of it, every sand dune, every fox, every bat, every blade of dune grass. Or at least once upon a time I did. And Joseph Lincoln intentionally decided to set all of his books in Cape Cod, but it's a different Cape Cod than the one that you could have found even if you'd gone there in the 30s. Which was, plenty of people were doing that. Plenty of people had beach houses at Cape Cod in the 30s and the late 20s and the early 40s. And those beach houses were not modernized at all. There was maybe a toilet inside, maybe. You had a working garden. You were gonna produce your own food for the summer mostly. You would go and fish. You would produce vegetables, and it wasn't weatherized. So the nights on the Cape, except in high summer, can get pretty cold. And there was no help for that. You just had to have plenty of blankets. Maybe toast a rock by the fireplace all night long. But just toast a rock by the fireplace while you're eating, while you're talking, while you're swapping stories, or maybe some wine by the kerosene lamp. And then when it's time to go to bed, you put the rock in the bed. It's not going to set the sheets on fire, but it is nice and warm. It's a bed warmer. All sorts of little details like that. That the Cape Cod of that period, Joseph Lincoln took that and drew a fine mist around it to make it a storyland. that never changes and that's full of salty characters and people from Boston and from New York who come and interact with those salty characters. And it's delightful, absolutely delightful. It was a magical idea to do, and he does it perfectly. Every time he does it perfectly. He would certainly have told you that a lot of the old salts or particular Cape Cod characters in these books were drawn from life, but in a lot of cases they weren't. They were perfected from life, and in any case, the Cape in these books is long gone. And I love them for that reason. I haven't read A. Hall and Company in I don't know how long, maybe never. I'll know in the first 20 pages if this is a Joseph Lincoln book that I've read. I would hope, I can hope, that if somebody got rid of this, then maybe they have others that are in good shape, that have the dust jackets on them. I would love to have a whole collection of this author. I would gladly go back and read him and reread him. Okay, then we have another book for that bookcase of books about books and authors. This is a weird one. This is from, what is this? This is very beginning of the century, I would say, 1920. This is from 1920. It's by Robert Cortes Holliday, and it's called Men and Books and Cities. And it's a collection of random thoughts that the author has. He says it, if I remember correctly, he says it at the beginning of, he makes a forward, but he says it could also be an indictment. This rambling hodgepodge of irresponsible comment was conceived in sin and grew to its present state of deformity without benefit of any discipline whatever. It has known no home but the hotel, the street, and the train car, no parent but a wastrel and a vagabond. And it's a whole bunch of mostly literary reflections on people like, oh wow, okay, well, I got this at the Brattle this morning, but somebody else got it a long time ago at Avenue Victor Hugo for $12.50. Oh, wow. Avenue Victor Hugo was a used bookstore in Boston. A good deal closer to me than the Brattle. I spent so much time in Avenue Victor Hugo. Wow. So this book has been around. What are some of the things that he writes about in here? George Meredith, Milton, Shakespeare, Booth Tarkington, Robert Herrick, E.V. Lucas, the travel writer, gets a go around in here. Jack London, but all in a very informal way, a very jocular and informal way. And it's a perfect example of how all of your reading is connected. This book is connected to a miracle. We don't think of it as a miracle, especially young people who've grown up with it don't think of it as a miracle. But the way electronic books work is nearly miraculous to those of us who once upon a time had to think and make lists and plan out a day to go to the library or a day to trek to the nearest used bookstore and hope, against hope, that maybe you'll find something that you're looking for. That, in a large part, doesn't exist anymore. And this is a perfect example of this, because this author, Robert Halliday, wrote a book called Walking Stick Papers that's very much like this book. It's just a random collection of stuff, of literary reminiscences. And the other day, I was reading this on the Kindle. Why Authors Go Wrong by Grant Overton, which I found with this cover on Project Gutenberg for free. So if you read ebooks, you could download this. And the reason that I wanted to read this is because once upon a time at an old library here in Boston, I encountered a paper copy of this book and read it and really liked it. And one of the pieces in it, one of the little literary reflections in it, is about book reviewing. One of the things in Why Authors Go Wrong, the main essay is the essay called Why Authors Go Wrong. And the author, Overton, has a very clear analysis of why authors go wrong. He says, all authors go wrong immediately and permanently when they stop writing for money. And he elaborates on it. Your artistic, muse-inspired soul is fighting the whole time, but boy, if he isn't convincing. But later on, he writes about book reviewing in here. And in the essay in this book, in which he mentions that he's going to take up the battered old subject of book reviewing, he mentions Walking Stick Papers by Robert Halliday. And when I was reading this book on the Kindle, propped up in bed on pillows, beautiful, cool night, being sound asleep on top of my belly. When I was reading this book and came across that mention, I paused, went to Project Gutenberg, found Walking Stick Papers, downloaded it into the Kindle, and read the piece in that book on book reviewing, all in a span of 5 minutes. A miracle. 5 minutes is all it took in the middle of this book to find the book this author was talking about, get it onto this device, and read it. Not the whole of it. I read the part about book reviewing, and then came right back to this piece as if I hadn't even missed a beat. It was only the next morning that I realized, that I remembered how much work would have gone in to that very moment before the internet. For decades, for the whole of my life before the internet, for all of everybody's life, Erasmus's life, Hazlitt's life. They would have come across that mention and thought, I vaguely remember reading that piece. Oh, when will I ever find that book again? I wonder if the Athenaeum has a copy. They're old, and they don't deacquisition books. Maybe they still do. Yeah, but it's Friday night. They're not going to be open until Monday morning. And I've got stuff to do on Monday morning, of course, and Tuesday morning. But maybe I can get to them on Thursday afternoon. I'll go in, I'll look around the most likely place. If it hasn't been taken out, then maybe I'll be lucky, and that book will be there. Then I can take it out, walk it all the way back home, sweating or freezing or whatever, waiting for subways, then get back here, get everything that I need to do done, settle in with reading, and that's right, over in the bag is that book. Get it out, find the place where the book reviewing section is, read it, and then get back to this thing. That's 5 days. If I'm lucky. 5 minutes when I did this, when I encountered it here. Just amazing to me. Absolutely amazing. You'd think it would undercut a Brattle trip, but I'm okay with the wonder of books wherever I find it. So I found this, and believe you me, when I found this book, even though I now have a copy from Project Gutenberg, with the dumb placeholder covers that they have, the thing that I need to do now, I'm slowly creating a gigantic life-sized workaround of Calibre, the app that everybody else can get to work that I can't get to work. I'm slowly working a way to pick at getting to do all the things that it does without actually using it. I'd love to if it worked for me, but it doesn't. I can't get it to notice any books on my computer. The one element of Calibre that I have to learn now is how to make covers for books, because the stand-in cover for most Project Gutenberg books is pretty ugly. It's not like this. Every once in a while you'll find one that has a lovely old cover, but usually most of them don't. And for some reason, the standby in-house template that Project Gutenberg uses is ugly. I wonder if since I've got this miracle device right here, I wonder if I could show it to you. I probably can. Although a lot of you will already know. A lot of you already know what I'm talking about. Anyway, here we go. Here we go. This is young Allison, and this is... Oh, God help us. This is his book, The Delicious Vice. That's the sort of standby cover that Project Gutenberg uses now. There are a whole bunch of copyright-free standby covers they could use that are all aesthetically pleasing. Instead, they do this. But anyway, so I found this thing. I'm sure that I haven't read all of this, or that I don't remember it. So that was great. And it reminded me of the tedious story about a miracle that we all just take for granted and shouldn't at all. Because it's not just, it's not just the Delicious Vice, which is about reading. It's also that I can annotate it without having to get up and go across the room to get a pen or pencil. I can expand the font size or shrink it. I can take as many notes as I want on it and then send those notes in typewritten form to my inbox. Anyway, we'll stop talking about miracles. I just wanted to mention it because it actually did come up. I encountered this author and got one of his books in the act of reading about it. Then we'll get to an illustrated guidebook for Italy. This is something we've already seen. This series is old, but I have their volume for Venice. Of course I do. And I found one today for Rome that is these lovely illustrated guidebooks that is written by the composer, by the famous composer. I find that a little hard to believe. I haven't looked at this thing yet to see if maybe there's a tongue-in-cheek forward that says, yes, I know I have the famous composer's name, but it has all these great sepia tone photographs of an older Rome. I mean, the Spanish Steps will still be there. A lot of these statues will still be there, but a lot of the rubble and such has been cleaned up. Rome is far more touristed. It'll be really fun to see the changes, because this thing came out a century ago? It's a $3 hardcover, so it had to be a very long time ago. It was printed in France, and you know what the French are like. They probably didn't put a pub date on it. 1926. So for the Second World War. So long time ago, and that is so long ago. This is actually what you would have used as a guidebook. We don't think of it that way now. Nobody uses, as far as I know, nobody uses guidebooks anymore at all. They just use their phone, as well you should, since your luggage has spaces at a premium. But this is not a guidebook to Rome. This is a guidebook to a vanished Rome. I love my Venice volume in this series, so I will gladly take this one. And of course, when I saw this, I thought about my Venice volume and thought about the others. In Italy alone, they have one for the Dolomites, one for Florence that I would love to have, one for the Italian lakes. Oh, fantastic. And there are others. They have a bunch of them for France, including one for Paris that I wouldn't mind having. Maybe they will crop up. You never know. That is the way with the Brattle. Then we have a couple of paperbacks. We're almost done. We're not going to go on forever. It's nice to talk about books instead of pipe fitting. That is very nice to do. This next one is by Lawrence Babbitts, and I have had it a couple of times, and every time I've had it, I've given it away, including to viewers of this channel here. If the bean's not on her window, there we go. It's a great volume of military history. There's no other way to put it. It's a great volume of military history. It's this. It's a devil of a whipping. The Battle of the Cowpens. Was an absolutely seminal battle in the Southern theater of the American Revolution, in which Daniel Morgan faced a bragging, idiotic, flash-in-a-pan British soldier called Banastre Tarleton, and thoroughly destroyed him. Thoroughly destroyed him. And Babbitts does a fantastic job. He gives you all the personalities involved. He gives you all of the minute-by-minute drama of the battle involved. And he also does a very good job of showing the broader effects, the after effects of a major victory. He, I think, draws too heavy a case of connecting Cowpens to Cornwallis' surrender, but he could be right. And the military historian buffs read about the Battle of Cowpens all the time, and so do cadets at West Point, because it is a very rare example. In fact, I don't think there are any other examples in the American Revolution of a particular thing that happens in a battle. It has a particular name in French and in English, where the enemy charges at the middle. Banastre Tarleton was a hot-headed theatrical moron. He reached the area of Cowpens with exhausted troops, and his advanced scouts were telling him he was outnumbered, and he didn't care. He thought, a valorous charge into the valley of the shadow of death will do it. That will be all it takes. And, it wasn't that much longer after him that George Armstrong Custer thought the same thing. And it never works. Almost never works. And it didn't work in this case. Instead, Morgan's middle gave ground. And Tarleton's men were exultant. They were exhausted, they were hungry, and they were thinking, all right, well, the suffering was all worth it, because we're going to get an amazing victory. When really, Morgan's center was withdrawing so that his flanks could totally encompass Banastre Tarleton's men, so that they would face minutes later the ultimate nightmare of any men in combat, which is that you're taking fire from all sides. There's nowhere to go. You're circled. You're surrounded. It's an amazingly thrilling battle to read about, and this is its great book. And when I have this on the shelf and somebody emails me on a particular subject, I really want a thrilling book about the American Revolution, or I really want to dig into the details of the military side of the American Revolution, I go over to the shelf and grab this. And I'm going to have to resist that impulse. Instead of going over to the shelf and grabbing this, I will make the recommendation and promise to find you a copy of your own. I don't have to send you mine. So I was very happy to find this. Then this next one, also a trade paperback. I don't know anything about it. We'll have to see if it comes to anything. It's Ripperology, Jack the Ripper, the serial killer who struck the area of Whitechapel in London in 1888. I'm a huge Ripperologist. I'm a huge fan of the subject. I've read a huge amount on the subject, but I've never read this book. This is by Deborah MacDonald, with a forward by Colin Wilson, who's a huge Ripper writer, a huge Ripperologist in his own right. This is called The Prince, His Tutor, and the Ripper. And I'm assuming that this is James Stephens. That is James Stephens, but I'm assuming that this is all about, he was a tutor to Prince Albert Victor, the grandson of Queen Victoria, the oldest son of the man who would become King Edward. So in line to the throne, when King Edward died of the inevitable lung cancer or heart attack from endless smoking, Prince Albert Victor would have come to the throne. And his tutor was a cousin to Virginia Woolf and was a high-strung weirdo and taught him as much as he could. Prince Albert Victor was as stupid as a brick. It was literally impossible to teach him anything. He was as dumb as Queen Elizabeth II is smart. But James Stephens tried. And for a long time, some Ripperologists have said, well, he's a shady past. His congenital insanity was getting worse with time. When his story stops, the Ripper's story stops. The killings stop. And I don't think there's anything to it at all. I've read, the tutor here and the prince have been nominated several times by several Ripper writers as candidates for the murder. I don't believe it for a minute. I think there's a huge amount of evidence to the contrary. For the prince, certainly. So the prince is exonerated, unless you're going to say that 40 people at a dinner in Balmoral were all lying. If you say that the prince is certainly exonerated, that Prince Eddie did not do it, that he wasn't the Ripper, which I say definitely he was not the Ripper, mainly because he couldn't stub a toe competently, much less got a woman in 15 minutes with police on every block. But if you say that he's definitely not the Ripper, then you have to say that his tutor went solo under the eyes of everybody. It wasn't a minor position to be tutor to, the heir to the throne. But apparently this author delves into the subject in great detail. I mean, there's a huge amount of detail here. I'm perfectly willing to give it a try. I don't think that Deborah MacDonald will convince me that Virginia Woolf's cousin was Jack the Ripper. I don't think she will convince me of that. I think I'll be able to see fairly early on what's wrong with the book, but I have a decided sweet tooth for the subject of the Jack the Ripper murders. A decided sweet tooth for it. And this is one, I've read hundreds of books on the subject, but I've never read this one, so I'll give it a try. Then this next one is connected with an event that is hoovering up on the horizon. And it's one of these Avenell collected volumes. I don't think this is actually Avenell. I think this is just a knockoff. Yeah, Fairfax Press, but same idea and the same presentation. I showed you some of those Avenell books. I have a sweet spot for them, I admit. Big hardcover volumes that sort of collect an author. 4 books by a certain author, 5 books by a certain author would be in a volume like that. They did it for everybody. The Saint, we saw the volume for Dashiell Hammett, Maeve Binchy, John le Carré. And this is along the same lines, only it's Bruce Catton. This is Bruce Catton's Civil War, which is a really, really dumb title. You could call it virtually anything else. Bruce Catton didn't have a Civil War. But this has Mr. Lincoln's Army, Glory Road, and A Stillness at Appomattox. And it's one of these volumes here that have, they always look like this. Whatever the name of the press is at the bottom, they always look like this. They've got a line running along the the first quarter mark, and they're all just plain design. I haven't had this volume in forever and ever, and it has one of these plastic coverings on it, so I grabbed it. And what is the event that's hoovering up on the horizon? Well, I'm going to make a separate announcement video for that, so you'll have to wait your turn. And then the last thing, finally we're at the end. I could have stayed all day, except I couldn't have stayed all day because Frida wasn't with me, keep in mind. So after a while I realized, I'd better get back before the bricks start flying, because I don't want her to face that when I'm not there. So I couldn't stay forever, but I really wanted to. And if this construction ever ends, I'm going to go back. But this next one, the last thing that we'll do, is something that I always tell myself to grab when I'm at the Brattle. Never going to see it in any other used bookstore. But these things do crop up at the Brattle. And this particular kind of thing is endlessly fun. So whenever I see them, I grab them. It's these bound volumes of old magazines. Very old magazines. And that's what this is. This is from 1900. This is a bound volume of Scribner's. Which has just issue after issue after issue with it was a general interest magazine. It had fiction and nonfiction. There's an ongoing profile here of Oliver Cromwell, written by Theodore Roosevelt, but lots of other things too, with really good art. Here's a piece by James Carrington called New York at Night. Well, these very high detail black and white photos, but you also have the inevitable piece on the Boer War. Boy, oh boy. That'll be, you also have fiction that's illustrated. You've got historical fiction and whatnot. And it's just a few issues of Scribner's. I think, probably a dozen issues. Howard Pyle writing, "A life for a life. She finds the body. Oh my God." It's always touching. These things are in situ, right? They're the old magazines banging away for their weekly or monthly audience, totally unaware of the history, totally unaware of the future. It would never have occurred to anyone buying these issues of Scribner's magazine in 1900 that anyone would be buying a bound volume in Boston in 2022. Not in a million years. And the people, I haven't read this issue yet, this collection yet, but I guarantee you that those volumes on the Boer War will be talking about them as the very pinnacle of human violence, the very pinnacle of military devastation. I guarantee you that someone will be talking about it that way, will windify about it that way. Because the readers of Scribner's in 1900 had no idea. They had no idea that World War I was coming, no idea World War II was coming, they had no idea. And another thing that I really like about these volumes is that a lot of times you will get stuff in here by famous or semi-famous people that has never been collected anywhere else. I mean, has anyone ever... maybe somebody has put together Theodore Roosevelt's book on Oliver Cromwell. Maybe somebody scoured through Scribner's, collected all of these different chapters that he did, because it was all serialized. Even the fiction was serialized. And made them into a book. Theodore Roosevelt writing a book about Oliver Cromwell. I don't think I've ever seen that book. I'm wondering if this volume has it all. It probably does. And with this volume came a weird bookmark. This thing. It's America, We the People, but it's not cloth and it doesn't have a tassel. Instead, it's like a tongue depressor that you put in the book and it stands up like that. Have any of you ever seen a bookmark like that? I confess it's kind of neat, but it seems to me that it would make losing your place very easy, which is kind of bad for a bookmark. I kept expecting that it should be turned around, right, and that the bookmark should do that, but it absolutely refuses to do that. It doesn't want to. It wasn't made to do that. It's made to just slide in like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll twist it around myself, heat it up, and twist it around so that it does what I want. But I never pass up a bookmark when it comes to the book. So there you go. That was my trip to the Brattle this morning, in blissful solitude with the books, my friends, my old friends. Let's have a Steve period. We have Scribner's magazine, just a collection of them. If more of these show up, I'll grab them, absolutely. Bruce Catton's Civil War, a collection of 3 of his books. The Prince, His Tutor, and the Ripper. Was James Stephen Jack the Ripper? No. But what will this author say about it? That's what I'll be curious to know. A Devil of a Whipping, a fantastic piece of American military history. Rome, by the maestro, who maybe liked Rome. Men, Books, and Cities by Robert Holiday. A book that I was thinking about because I just reread a chunk of his book, Walking Stick Papers, which could show up at the Brattle. Then A. Hall and Company by Joseph Lincoln, with just in good shape. I will gladly take this and reread it. Where Books Fall Open, one of those little keepsake collectible stocking stuffer things about the wonder of books and whatnot. The Book and the Brotherhood by Iris Murdoch in a big fat Penguin trade paperback. Time for an Iris Murdoch reconsideration? A book on Roman satire that'll probably give me a lot of fun encounters with, Juvenal and Propertius and whatnot. And finally, Fast Company by the author going under the name of Marco Page, in which I guess Tom at LA Books is going to try to kill Jason Harrigan. I think we all saw that coming. So there you go. That is a Brattle book haul for you. To take my mind off endless construction. Now I'm going to do the other thing that is guaranteed to take my mind. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. The other thing that is guaranteed to take my mind off endless construction is to go out and walk with the bean. So that's what I'm going to do. And walk off my troubles. But this will eventually upload, and I will make other videos as time opens up. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.